Okay, so today you get to meet one of my very best coworkers and colleagues and friends. Elizabeth McDowell is with us, and we're going to talk first. We're going to talk to her twice this semester, but we're going to talk to her first about, I'm going to say, the more boring topic, the IPPF, the International. Oh gosh, I probably already said it wrong. What does it stand for? International Professional Practices Framework. Okay. All right. Yes, I got it. That shows how much we as internal auditors in real life really say those words, IPPF. But Elizabeth's going to give you really, I'd say, the real world view of the IPPF and how we use it. But before we do that, Elizabeth, will you tell the students a little bit about yourself and how you got into internal audit, your education? Although if you say Roll Tide, you know I'll be mad. No, I'm just kidding.
It was already being planned. Hello, everybody. Elizabeth McDowell. I have my CPA and my CIA, and I have been in internal audit for about 15 years. I have been in audit overall for going on 20. I started my career with Ernst & Young in Birmingham after I got my master's of accounting at University of Alabama. Roll Tide. Go Dogs, I guess.
There's a rivalry going on here if you can't tell.
So I started my career in external, but pretty quickly moved into internal audit. And I'm actually, in some ways, just as surprised as anyone to look around and realize that I am still doing this after this long, and I still love it. Not just as much, but even more than I did when I got into internal audit. So it's really exciting to see the profession evolve, but also my enjoyment of what I do. It's been really fun.
Awesome. Tell us one fun fact about yourself before we dive into the content. I'm going to put you on the spot.
One fun fact. When I was 17, I was an au pair in France for 4 girls under the age of 10, including 4-year-old twins. And in hindsight, nobody should have been entrusting me with the care of their one kid, let alone 4 kids. And I'm just lucky that we all made it through and all were alive at the end of the summer.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that fact. So I was wondering which one you were going to share. So that's a good one. All right, so let's dive into this semi-boring topic of the IPPF, but really important because it is the backbone of what we do and why we do it as internal auditors. What I'm going to do is actually share my screen here with the website for the students for the IPPF. Elizabeth, can you see my screen now?
And
okay, perfect. So this is where you guys as students are going to go a lot to study for your assessments and to really get a good idea of what the format of the IPPF is. Now, really what this is it's the authoritative guidance from the IIA, the Institute of Internal Auditors, and it has several parts. So I wanted to kind of go through that with you. I'm going to scroll down here. You can see currently all of the parts really on your screen right there. There are pieces that are mandatory guidance, which include the standards and those core principles of internal audit. And of course, they throw in the definition of internal audit. What does that mean to be an internal auditor? It goes through the code of ethics, which is a different video. So we're not going to talk to you about that at all today. I felt like that was a big enough standalone topic to do its own interview. And then it also has these other things that is implementation guidance, how we actually implement the standards, and then supplemental, even above and beyond the standards, how people have used it in practice. Now, those 2 bottom things right now are recommended guidance through the IIA. So that implementation and supplemental guidance. One thing I just want to mention real quick about the standards. I'm going to go ahead and click on the standards right here. There are different types of standards. There are attribute standards and there are performance standards. So I just want you to know briefly the difference between those 2 things. Attribute standards, they actually address the characteristics of organizations and parties performing the internal audit activities. So that would be us as the internal audit department. Now, the performance standards actually talk about the nature of the activities we actually perform, and they provide criteria against which the performance of these services can be evaluated. So why I want to bring that up is I know Elizabeth, either she's done them in the past or she might be getting ready to do one, has worked on quality assurance reviews, which is something the IIA standards say that internal audit departments have to get every, 5 years? 5 years. And as part of that, when somebody comes in to do a QAR review of an internal audit department, they're going through and saying, are they following these standards? I mean, really, that's the bottom line of what that is. So I just wanted to show you guys that. Now you can click on them. I'll just kind of click for fun here so you can see what the attribute standards look like. This is going to be your friend for the course, because I want you to know how to navigate the standards, how they currently are on the website, and really be able to read and interpret what they mean. Now, right now, this is currently the way the standards are. So how you're going to read them right now this semester is A is assurance standards and C is consulting. So that's just kind of another little nuance there. But as you can see, there are lots of different standards underneath both attribute and performance that you're going to review during this class. So I just wanted to give you a view of what that looks like as we start talking here. So Elizabeth, I'm going to kick it back to you. Now, I know you and I are very similar in that we think internal audit should add value. And sometimes traditional internal auditors spend way too much time making sure they're following the standards and not really helping their organization. So tell us how you've balanced using the standards in real life, and still helped your organization at the same time.
Right. I think that it's a lot like studying for and getting your CPA license or your certified internal audit. It's really important to know the rules behind what you do, but you can't keep a rule book beside you and follow that and be documenting to that every single day. So it's important to understand the why and the how, but in actual practice, the way that you actually do something, the way that you audit, the way that you document, the way that you write a report might vary, but you should be still adhering to the way that the IIA needs us to perform our job.
Yeah, so I definitely like how you put that, and it just as an example to solidify that, the standards are going to say that internal auditors have to plan for an engagement, which is why we have a whole module on planning, but it doesn't tell us necessarily exactly how to do that, right? So it's providing this, these standards of which we have to abide. Yes, we have to write a report, but is it prescriptive on exactly what that report should look like? No, it might say, it should include these parts.
Exactly.
But, as you're saying, it's like, we can't think about it all the time. We've just got to know the basics and then be able to apply that to however it works for our organization, right?
Right. And even in terms of things like independence, obviously that's a cornerstone of our field. It is so important that we as internal auditors remain independent, but that isn't black and white. It's not going to look the same for every organization or every audit shop. There may be some shops that are comfortable doing certain consulting engagements and others aren't. And I think that that's okay. I don't think that it should be so rules driven that we have to basically check every time we want to do something to make sure we're all professionals. And if we can still show that, no, we are independent in appearance and in fact, then I think that that's still okay.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, it's about how we add value to our organizations. And if you're too strict in that and you're so worried about, you know, following these guidelines, these standards, then you're going to miss the big picture of why we're there. And I think, yeah, it's good that they're there. And I do want to just mention for the students, just in case you do end up in internal audit, some of the terms that real professionals use is actually the red book. And it's just because the printed version of the IPPF or the standards has a red cover. I think that's why. Elizabeth, is that? I think that's why. Literally.
To be honest, I don't know if I've ever seen a hard
copy of it. Yeah. Well, so if you hear anybody later in life call it the red book, that is just the IIA standards. Right. And then governmental auditors, of which I've got a few that you guys are hearing from during this class, they use something called the yellow book. So I just wanted you to know, so government auditors have kind of this little bit different spin on their specifically, I think, performance standards that they do at the government level. So they call it the yellow book, just so you all know there. Elizabeth, before we move on to the changes coming to the IPPF, because I want the students to know there might be a change coming in the future, what do you think is the most important piece of it? The whole IPPF, you know, the definition, the mission, the standards themselves, the guidance. What do you think?
I think that the most important piece is probably the mission. And I say that because it does wrap around the entire, the visual that we were looking at, it wraps around the entire IPPF. And at the core of everything we do is that mission. Why are we doing it? To add value, to promote the organizational objectives of our organization. And I think that really, without that, we don't need mandatory guidance or recommended guidance or the implementation and supplemental. We have to have that mission at the core of everything.
Yeah, so I just shared my screen so you can kind of see the visual that we're talking about. This is kind of the current IPPF. And as Elizabeth said, the mission wraps around everything. Now, I do want to kind of transition here at the end of this video into it is evolving. The IPPF is changing. We don't really know what's happening behind the scenes. They did open a comment period. It was open until May of 2023, and it's now closed. And they're supposedly looking through all those comments from all of us internal audit professionals that reviewed the new proposed changes. And you know, I don't want you to think too much about this or worry too much about it. I do just kind of want to show you the new visual. So did the new one pop up, Elizabeth? Yeah, so we've got this new, you know, visual around now the purpose and the mission is really at the top. They're combined at the top. And then underneath that, they put ethics and professionalism, how we govern, manage the profession, and then perform it. And one thing I do want to mention that I like in the changes is that they have included the guidance that used to be supplemental, not mandatory. They've included just the guidance within the standards. So there's really not two parts to it anymore.
Not hunting, kind of going back and forth between mandatory or even between implementation and supplemental. It's just all in one section. I like that too. I also think it's really cool. I'm pretty sure this is my first time going through such a significant overhaul in my career. And it's been really cool how much it was publicized throughout the internal audit community, how really proactive they were about getting feedback. And I know that it was probably more than thousands of public comments and private comments and everything were submitted, and they're sifting through those now and then going to incorporate all of those comments, or probably not all of them, but some of them, and then have I think that they're planned to be finalized before the end of the year, before the end of 2023. But it's really cool to see this process where the industry and profession that I'm in is evolving. And I think that's really important too, especially with technology and how our profession has changed so much in the past 10, 15, 20 years. We're not just staying where we are. We're not becoming stale. We want to evolve with the technology and the profession and our companies that we work for.
Yeah, I do. I agree. So I second that. I've never gone through anything like this. And I do think, as much as some people don't like some of the changes that are happening, I think when they sit back and look at it, they'll realize that they are trying to just really make it easier for us to follow the standards. And so, things like there's not going to be any attribute and performance anymore. And then it's not going to have the assurance and consulting breakout, because I think they've seen that a lot of the work we do might include both of those things. And so there doesn't need to be a differentiation, because we can provide assurance and consult for the future at the exact same time. And so it doesn't need two different guidelines, right? So I think they are watching how we've evolved, and hopefully know that they needed to evolve as well.
And at the end of the day, I don't think it's really going to change that much about how we do what we do. I think the biggest change is likely to the quality assurance reviews that you mentioned, because that is the one time where you come in and you've got a checklist of everything that you need to be conforming with officially. But the way that we audit and the way that we perform our jobs isn't going to change. If anything, it should more closely line up to the IPPF, because they're updating it to reflect the industry as it stands today versus 20 years ago, or I'm not even sure when it was last updated.
Yeah, no. And here's the timeline too, just because I was interested in that too. I know we hear, late 2023, but given it's already, fall semester 2023, are we really going to have one? It looks like I'm going to guess into 2024.
I'd be shocked if they finalized it this year in 2023. I don't see how I think that the public response was a lot more than they originally thought, which is fantastic that everyone is participating, but that just is a lot more work to sift through all of that and then incorporate it.
Yep. So this is really just FYI for the future for you all to know. It looks like, it does take 12 months to, even after they release it, for internal audit departments to be really held accountable for these new standards. So if you end up in the internal profession, Elizabeth and I just wanted to make sure you know that this was coming. So Elizabeth, I'm going to say thank you now for joining us for this session. You're going to see Elizabeth later. She's going to chat with us about agile auditing, which is a much more fun topic than the IPPF. So Elizabeth, thanks for being with us, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much.